Hey pals, Alicia here. Welcome to my channel. Let's sit in the sun and talk about some short stories. Hey, how's it going? I hope you are all doing well. If you're new here, this is a place where we talk about books. So I've mentioned a few times on my channel that I love short story collections. I love horror short stories, I love contemporary short stories, I love science fiction, speculative fiction, fantasy short stories. I just love the short story format. So I have so many short story collections to recommend, way too many for one video. So I thought this would be fun to do this almost as an episode format where I just pick 5 and talk about 5, and then we'll come back to this and we'll add 5 more. So I have 5 short story collections to share with you today. They are not in any particular order. I haven't ranked them based on which one is my favorite because I love them all and I want other people to read them. So without further ado, let's get into those books. So the first collection I would like to share with you today is Revenge, 11 Dark Tales by Yoko Ogawa. This short story collection was published in 1998 in Japan and then was published in the US in 2013. And this is a great example of like connected short stories. Revenge is kind of following themes of murder and mourning and family dynamics, and there was a little bit of supernatural elements in there. So if you read the stories you know, kind of separately and out of order, they are all just kind of these slow creeping ominous short stories, but if you read them in order from beginning to end, they are each story that follows is connected to the previous one in some way. Sometimes it is an overt connection and sometimes it's a little bit more subtle that you have to pick up along the way. This is an amazing collection. It is amazingly written. After reading it, I only wanted to go out and get everything else that Yoko Ogawa has written. Yeah, you just kind of feel a sense of unease the whole time you are reading it. It is beautiful prose even though it is dealing with generally dealing with murder and death. Like those are themes prevalent throughout the collection. It is a short collection. I feel like it's maybe around 150 pages total, but it is not to be missed. The second short story collection that I would love to share with you today is Friday Black by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. This was published in 2018, and this is a collection of 12 speculative fiction, dystopian, horror, contemporary short stories. I feel like this is most generally marketed as speculative fiction, but this collection is all about challenging how far like contemporary society and the racism that is very much alive and prevalent in the world could be pushed. I can't say that I, sat down and read this and was like, I am fully enjoying and loving everything that I am reading, because no, like this collection is not that. This is scathing and it is angry and it is full of rage. It is about racism and capitalism and ignorance in America and the world, and how far that reality can be pushed into, and he's telling these fictionalized stories and events, but they are so possible, which is why it is such a discomforting read. There are a few absolute like mind-shattering, life-changing stories in this. The first one, the Finkelstein 5, is about a white man who comes into a parking lot and just like brutally murders and decapitates 5 black children, and then the subsequent trial against this man, of which nothing really happens. Like, he essentially gets away with it, and you read it and you are furious, but you are also, you are forced to look at what's happening in the real world, and how this is not that far from possible. There is another one called Zimmerland in here, and it is about a black man who works in this carnival, and his job in this carnival is to be present in a virtual reality scenario, and the scenario is kind of like a suburban neighborhood, and his only job in this is to just be present as a black man walking down the street in this suburban neighborhood. And then this carnival experience is for people to come into this safe virtual reality room and confront how they, primarily as white people, would deal with a black man walking down the street in their neighborhood. And this carnival experience is touted as being a cultural experiment for you to kind of learn how to de-escalate situations, or learn how to confront how you would handle situations, high stress situations like this, even though there is no stress. He is just a man walking down the street in this neighborhood, but it ultimately unwinds into this just brutal game for white people to kill and murder black men in a virtual reality room for which there is no consequences for their actions. They can just go into this room, they can, defend their neighborhood and murder this man in the name of self-defense, and then pay money to do this, and then leave and go home and go on with their lives. It is so uncomfortable to read this collection, but it is so important to read this point of view, and how he's telling fiction stories, but they are not fiction. Like, they are very real problems now, today more than ever. Today as always. Like, this is I absolutely recommend this collection. It really gave me a lot to think about and a lot to, challenge within myself. And this one is not to be missed either. The third short story collection I would love to share with you is Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. This book was published, or this collection was published, in 2012, but each of the 8 stories that are captured in here were published all throughout Ted Chiang's career. Some of them I think were even published in the 80s or 90s. Ted Chiang writes science fiction, speculative fiction, a little bit of fantasy, and each one of the stories in this collection are just like absolutely chef's kiss. He does so much research for the stories that he writes. The title story, Stories of Your Life, that was adapted into the movie Arrival. I think it came out in like maybe 2017, 2018. I will provide the exact date below. Arrival is a story about aliens who land on the Earth, and humans are kind of trying to study them, trying to figure out why they're here, but they don't speak a language that humans understand. It is not a vocal, it is not a tone language, so it is about a linguist coming in and trying to figure out how they are communicating, to see how we can communicate with them. And then there's a whole bunch of really amazing and cool twists and turns that happen there. But Ted Chiang studied linguistics for, I think, 5+ years before he even attempted to write that short story. So he really puts a lot into these stories. There is one story in here called Hell is the Absence of God. And I am not a person of faith, I'm not a religious person, but this story, for just the first and realest time in my life, made me understand what blind faith is and why people do have faith. Like, it was an eye-opening, powerful read. There were a few stories in here that when you get like frisson, like when you get the goosebumps, there were a few stories in here where after I had finished reading it, I just like felt this power, like I was really emotional, even though they weren't emotional stories, just because I knew I was in the presence of something so incredible and powerful. Ted Chiang has another bind up called Exhalation that came out last year that I have just been so anticipating. I have it on my shelf. I haven't read it yet just because I'm waiting for this moment to be ready to digest more of just his excellent storytelling. So another one not to be missed. Next, I've got an anthology collection. This is Other Voices, Other Tombs. This was edited by Brehl and Sullivan, and this is a collection of short stories from a bunch of different authors into one bind up. I really appreciated this collection because it combined more known authors, like Anya Allborn is in here, Gemma Files is in here, with lesser known authors, or even authors who, you know, only really have a presence in blogs or even on YouTube. So it kind of allowed new voices to come in with like the selling feature of greater known authors. And there were so many stories in here that I really liked. The one by Anya Allborn was terrifying. This is a horror anthology collection. The one by Anya Allborn is about a baby monitoring system that something goes wrong. Something goes wrong with it. The very last story in this collection, Alone in the Dark by J.D. McGregor, was shattering. It was just the choice to put this at the end of this collection was just such an amazing choice, because it's one of those resonating stories that is definitely horror, but it's horror mixed with trauma and mourning and grief. And I read this collection only a few months ago. I think it was in March that I read this one, and I would recommend this to anyone if you are looking to get into horror and looking for new voices to discover writing horror, and you do like horror short stories. Other Voices, Other Tombs is one I would definitely recommend. And the last book that I would like to recommend in this 5 short story recommendations video is Taaqtumi, an anthology of Arctic horror stories. I just finished reading this, which is why I kind of, this is the book that inspired me to make this video. Taaqtumi is an Inuktitut word for in the dark, and these short stories all take place in the Arctic. The majority of the writers are own voices. They are Inuk writers writing about living in the Arctic, living in these kind of remote communities, and the horror of both of remote place and like the isolation of the winter, but then also mythology, also racism, also colonialism. There is a whole mix of different experiences and voices that are told in this collection. Some of the stories were more abruptly and overtly terrifying. There's a story about zombies. There is a story about a polar bear attacking a mother and her baby, but then there are also much more sinister, quiet stories. There is one that was so deeply unsettling. It was a story about some sort of pandemic that had raised the world, but this remote community, they were surviving, they were thriving, they were taking care of themselves, they were just, you know, they were living their life on their land as they always had been. And this kind of pandemic is a southern white person problem. And then some doctors fly in to this community, to some white doctors fly in to, you know, check in on them and see how they're doing. But it's like, that is not their like white person's place to come in and try and, you know, advise them on how they should be taking care of themselves. And it was about these doctors coming in and trying to, being like, we're gonna take you down to the closest city, somewhere in Ontario probably, and we're gonna evaluate you, and we're gonna see if you guys are all free of this pandemic. But it's like, that is only introducing risk into this community, and it was from the community's point of view, and it was horrible and it was terrifying, but also it was literally just a commentary on the way that white people invade indigenous communities and don't let them live their own lives with their own customs that they have been using and practicing for millennia when we've only been here for like 150 years. So there is so much social commentary in this collection, mixed with supernatural, mixed with mythology, mixed with folklore, and I loved this also, and am looking forward to giving this book away as gifts in the future, because this was just an excellent collection that captured an excellent array of voices that I had not read but want to read more of. So there you have it, pals. Let me know if you have read any of these books, if you want to read any of them now. I am now only looking into more collections that I would love to share with you. Short story collections, again, like I said, are just one of my favorite mediums to consume fiction, and I am so excited to share these stories with you. So again, take care out there, pals. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate talking about books with you all. And yeah, until next time, see you, pals!